People always assume ghost stories are exaggerated. Blurry photos, fake screams, edited clips designed to scare kids online. But every once in a while, footage surfaces that refuses to fit any logical explanation. Not because it's dramatic, but because it's subtle, quiet, almost accidental. These are not staged encounters. These are moments where the camera was rolling and something else stepped into frame. Across the world, abandoned buildings have become magnets for unexplained activity. Hospitals left behind after tragedies. Schools shut down after mysterious incidents. Hotels where guests refused to stay the night. In these places, people report the same things again and again. Cold air with no source, footsteps where no one is walking, and shadows that move against the light. Tonight, you're about to see and hear accounts of ghostly apparitions caught on camera in some of the most haunted locations ever documented. The first recording comes from an abandoned hospital in the Midwest. Built in the 1940s, the facility closed abruptly after a fire destroyed one of its upper floors. Official reports claimed the building was empty at the time, but locals insist patients were still inside. For decades, the hospital has remained sealed, yet explorers continue to sneak in, drawn by reports of movement inside the windows late at night. The footage was captured by a single urban explorer who entered the building just after midnight. His camera shows long corridors coated in dust, peeling paint hanging from the walls like skin. As he walks, his footsteps echo unnaturally loud, as if the building itself is amplifying every sound. At first, nothing unusual appears. Then, near the end of a hallway, the camera briefly catches something reflected in a shattered mirror. At first glance, it looks like a trick of light, but when the explorer rewinds the footage later, frame by frame, a shape becomes visible. A tall, human-like figure standing behind him. It has no clear facial features, just a pale outline darker than the surrounding air. What makes the footage unsettling is not the figure itself, but the fact that the explorer never reacts. He didn't see it. The apparition appears for less than a second, then vanishes. Experts who reviewed the clip ruled out camera distortion and lens flare. The figure casts a shadow consistent with the hallway lighting. And most disturbing of all, the explorer was alone. No crew. No second person. No explanation. The next case comes from a closed boarding school in Northern Europe, abandoned after reports of violent incidents involving students in the 1970s. Security cameras were installed years later to prevent vandalism, but the footage they captured was never meant for the public. In the clip, a long classroom corridor is shown from a fixed angle. The timestamp reads 2:17 a.m. The hallway is empty for nearly 3 minutes. Then, without warning, a door at the far end slowly opens. No force is visible. No draft. The door stops halfway and remains there, unmoving. Seconds later, a figure steps into view. It looks like a child. Small. Thin. Standing perfectly still. The figure does not walk forward. It does not move its arms. It simply stands there, facing the camera. The lights flicker once, and when they stabilize, the hallway is empty again. The door is closed. Security logs confirm no one entered or exited the building that night. Former staff members later claimed students used to report seeing a child standing in the hallway after curfew. A child who never spoke. A child who disappeared when approached. The third piece of footage was captured inside an abandoned hotel in South America. Once a luxury destination, the hotel shut down after multiple guests reported waking up in rooms they never checked into. The final straw came when a tourist vanished without explanation. The building has remained locked ever since. A group of filmmakers received permission to document the interior during daylight hours. What they didn't expect was what their stationary camera recorded after they left for lunch. The camera was left rolling in the lobby. For over 40 minutes, nothing happens. Then a shadow appears near the staircase. It doesn't match any visible light source. It stretches unnaturally long, bending upward along the wall. Slowly, it rises until it takes on the rough outline of a person standing upright. The shadow pauses, then moves forward, against the direction of the light, before collapsing back into the floor. No one was inside the building. No doors opened. No sound was recorded. The filmmakers later said they didn't notice the shadow until reviewing the footage weeks later. By then, they refused to return to the hotel. Another disturbing recording comes from an underground tunnel system beneath a major city. Originally built as a maintenance passage, the tunnels were sealed after repeated accidents and unexplained incidents. Urban explorers who've entered illegally report hearing voices that echo even when no one is speaking. In this footage, the camera is mounted on a chest harness. The explorer walks through narrow concrete corridors illuminated only by a headlamp. The air is thick. Every sound echoes. Suddenly, a shape crosses the tunnel behind him. Not a shadow, not a reflection. A solid figure, visible for less than half a second. The explorer doesn't notice at the time, but viewers later point out something terrifying. The figure's movement speed doesn't match human motion. It glides rather than walks. And when slowed down, it appears semi-transparent, with the tunnel wall faintly visible through its torso. No trains were running. No air drafts were present. The footage remains unexplained. One of the most chilling cases involves a night security guard at an abandoned asylum in the United States. The building was scheduled for demolition, but guards were hired to prevent trespassing. One guard brought his own camera after experiencing strange occurrences during his shifts. In the footage, the guard walks past a row of cells. As he passes one doorway, the camera captures a face peering out from the darkness. Pale, expressionless, eyes reflecting the infrared light. The guard doesn't stop. He doesn't turn. But seconds later, a whisper is heard on the audio. Not static, not interference. A voice. When enhanced, the audio appears to say the guard's name. The guard quit the next morning. The final clip in this video comes from a location so infamous that locals refuse to say its name. A rural building that once served as a care facility before shutting down after multiple unexplained deaths. The footage shows a camera placed at the end of a long hallway. At first, the hall is empty. Then the temperature sensor spikes suddenly. The camera glitches, and out of the distortion, a figure forms. It doesn't walk into frame. It fades into existence, standing inches from the lens. The clip ends abruptly. No edits. No transition. Just silence. What makes these recordings disturbing isn't just what they show. It's how they were captured. No jump scares. No dramatic music. Just cameras doing what they were designed to do. Record reality. Skeptics argue these are coincidences, optical illusions, psychological projections. And in many cases, they might be right. But when footage from different countries, different buildings, and different cameras all show the same thing, figures watching, standing, waiting, it raises a question science hasn't fully answered. What if these places remember? What if the walls, the floors, the hallways absorb something human and replay it when no one is supposed to be watching? Because if ghosts aren't real, then why do they keep showing up on camera? And more importantly, why do they always seem to be watching us back? And there's something else most people don't realize about these recordings. Cameras don't just capture images. They capture time. They freeze moments that the human brain can barely process in real life. That's why so many of these apparitions aren't noticed until after the fact, when someone slows the footage down, rewinds it, watches it again in silence. In many of the most disturbing cases, the people filming didn't feel fear at all while they were inside these locations. No panic, no dread, just curiosity. But the moment they reviewed the footage later, everything changed. One such case comes from a rural church that burned down in the early 1900s. The ruins remain standing, surrounded by trees that locals refused to walk through after sunset. A group of photographers visited the site to capture long exposure shots at night. Their cameras were mounted on tripods, taking photos every 30 seconds. At first, the images were empty, broken stone walls, moonlight filtering through branches. Then, halfway through the sequence, a figure appears. It's faint, almost translucent, standing inside what used to be the altar. The figure doesn't move between frames. It doesn't shift positions. It simply exists there for 6 consecutive photos, then vanishes. What makes this unsettling is the exposure time. Each photo captured 30 seconds of light. If the figure were a person, they would have blurred. If it were an animal, it would have moved. but the figure is sharp. Still, like it wasn't bound by time the same way everything else was. Another case involved a residential building in Asia scheduled for demolition. Tenants had moved out after repeated complaints of seeing people in their apartments who weren't real. Maintenance workers installed cameras to monitor the property overnight. At exactly 3:12 a.m., one camera shows an elevator door opening. No one enters, but when the doors close, a face is visible in the reflective metal. A face that doesn't belong to anyone on the security roster. The footage was analyzed frame by frame. The face appears only during the closing motion of the door, as if it exists between moments, only visible while the world is in motion. Then there's the phenomenon many investigators call delayed awareness. In these cases, the apparition isn't hidden in reflections or shadows. It's directly visible, center frame, but the human brain simply doesn't register it at the time. One investigator filmed inside an abandoned factory at night. Reviewing the footage later, he noticed something standing in the background of almost every shot. A figure, always the same distance away, always partially obscured, never approaching, never leaving. It was there the entire time. When asked why he didn't notice it while filming, his response was chilling. "I don't think it wanted me to." Some of the most disturbing footage comes from places that are still in use. Hotels, apartment buildings, parking garages. These are places where people live normal lives, unaware that something else may be sharing the space with them. In one hotel surveillance clip, a woman exits her room late at night and walks down the hallway. As she turns the corner, the camera briefly captures a second figure stepping out of her room behind her. The figure pauses, then slowly retreats back inside. The hotel claimed it was a reflection, but reflections don't open doors. Children's footage is even harder to dismiss. Young kids often film without intention, just playing with a phone or camera. In several documented cases, children captured figures standing behind them while they laughed, talked, or danced. One clip shows a child recording herself in a living room. Behind her, reflected in a dark television screen, a tall figure stands motionless. The child never reacts. The figure disappears the moment the camera angle shifts. Parents reviewing the footage later described feeling sick when they noticed it. The child had never mentioned seeing anything strange, which raises an unsettling possibility. What if some apparitions don't want to be seen? What if they only reveal themselves to cameras? Some paranormal researchers believe cameras act as neutral observers, devices without fear, emotion, or disbelief. They don't rationalize. They don't look away. They simply record. And perhaps whatever exists in these haunted locations understands that. Another infamous case involves a body camera worn by a firefighter during a routine inspection of a burned-out apartment building. The footage shows the firefighter walking through dark rooms, calling out. At one point, the camera briefly turns toward a hallway. A figure stands there, clear as day. The firefighter doesn't react. Later, when reviewing the footage, he insisted the hallway was empty. But the figure is unmistakable, standing upright, watching, not moving. The camera captures it for nearly 3 seconds, far longer than most ghost footage. Long enough to be undeniable. What makes these recordings truly terrifying isn't just the appearance of these entities. It's their behavior. They don't attack. They don't chase. They don't scream. They observe. They linger. They wait. In some footage, they appear closer to the camera each time, as if learning how to exist within the frame. In others, they seem to react to being noticed, vanishing the moment someone acknowledges them. There are even cases where apparitions appear to interact with the camera itself, tilting their heads, leaning closer, blocking the lens, almost curious, almost aware. And that brings us to the most disturbing question of all. If these apparitions are real, why are they appearing more often now? Cameras are everywhere. Phones, security systems, dash cams, baby monitors, devices watching constantly, recording moments we never meant to capture. And yet, the more we film, the more these figures appear. Not less. More. Some believe we're simply documenting what's always been there. Others believe something is changing, that whatever exists alongside us is becoming easier to see. Or worse, more willing to be seen. So the next time you see a shadow in the background of a video, or notice a figure standing where no one should be, ask yourself this: was it a glitch? Or was it waiting for the camera to notice it? Because if ghosts aren't real, then why do they keep appearing where only cameras can see them? And if they are real, how long have they been standing just outside the frame?